This video is brought to you by Amtech Blades. We are very excited to be partnering with Amtech. Bill Rapier, longtime Navy SEAL, DevGuru operator, amazing brother and friend. Looking for a battle axe to carry on your person, to chop some wood? They've got you covered. Looking for a blade to carry on you every day? Also got you covered. Look at this. I got to check my mail. What do we got going on here? Oh, look how sharp that is. What is this? Oh, 5% off. You can go to amtechblades.com, put Apology in the coupon code, get 5% off your order, and he will match that and give 5% to End Abortion Now. Again, amtechblades.com. We're grateful.
Non-rockabotus must stop. I don't want to rock the boat. I want to sink it.
Are you going to bark all day, little doggy? Or are you going to bite?
We're being delusional. I love you, Jeff.
Delusional, yeah. Delusional's okay in your worldview. I'm an animal. You don't chastise chickens for being delusional. You don't chastise pigs for being delusional. So you calling me delusional using your worldview is perfectly okay. It doesn't really hurt. She hung up on me.
What?
Desperate times call for faithful men and not for careful men. The careful men come later and write the biographies of the faithful men, lauding them for their courage.
Go into all the world and make disciples. Not go into the world and make buddies. Not to make brosives.
Right.
Don't go into the world and make homies.
Right.
Disciples.
I got a bit of a jiggle neck. That's a joke, Pastor.
When we have the real message of truth, we cannot let somebody say they're speaking truth when they're not.
Take an amazing journey to a place that will blow your mind and move your heart so you will never be the same again.
The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, they do abominable deeds, there is none who does good. That's Psalm 14:1, everybody. Welcome back, everybody, to the gospel heard around the world. This is Apologia Radio. You can get more at apologiastudios.com, APOLOGIA studios.com. Go to apologiastudios.com when this is over. Go get the past episodes of Apologia Radio, Provoked, Sheologians, Cultish, all there for your listening pleasure. And don't forget to sign up for All Access. We have our app coming very, very soon. It is almost completed. Apologia Studios. Sign up for All Access. You get all kinds of additional content for partnering with us in ministry. We want to bless your life. You've got the after shows. You've got Apologia Academy. You've got Eli Ayala from Revealed Apologetics doing courses through apologetics, so you can get your defense of the Christian faith game on. You can learn all about that. You've got Apologia Academy. You've got the full episodes of Collision. Everything is there. And so sign up. Don't forget also, everyone, I always want to remind you, go get your free, absolutely free Bonson U account at apologiastudios.com. One of the greatest giants and Christian philosophers and apologists in the history of the Christian faith. We have gifted to us all of his life's work from the Bonson family, his seminary lectures, college courses, debates, his teaching at church, all that, like 2,000 pieces of audio content, all available for you completely for free, top-tier theological education, all at apologiastudios.com. Just go sign up for your Bonson U account and get started. I'm Jeff the Common Ninja. That's Luke the Bear.
What up?
That's Zachary Conover.
Hey, everyone.
Director of Communications with End Abortion Now. Welcome, everybody. So, wanted to today engage a bit with the recent appearance of Charlie Kirk on Club Random with Bill Maher. We were just in California.
We were.
To see the retirement ceremony for Commander Geary, Captain Brad Geary. Amazing experience that was. Once in a lifetime. We were at the Buds compound. We were on the grinder for the retirement ceremony of Captain Geary. It was an amazing experience being surrounded by active duty Navy SEALs, legends in the SEAL community, including some of the old legends like the men with green faces from Vietnam kind of stuff. It was just absolutely epic. But while we were there, and we had the day we were doing the retirement ceremony at Bud's, and then we got to go have dinner with all the SEALs afterwards. Coming back to the hotel, and I saw all this set up on the beach, and it was for a Turning Point USA event on the beach.
It was a donor party.
That's right, at Coronado. It was nice.
And I know because I'll tell you her story and then I'll tell mine.
Yeah, it was very nice. Anyway, Charlie Kirk was there. My son's a huge fan of Charlie Kirk. He loves to watch liberals get owned, and so he loved Charlie Kirk. He was with me. He was like, "No, wait, Dad, please, Dad, can we just leave the dinner early enough so I can come and meet him?" I was like, sure, I think we can make it happen. And so I ended up going back and got to say hi to Charlie Kirk and introduce him to my son. But go ahead.
I didn't know that.
I got a text from Asa because Asa was there as well, but he wasn't at that event for whatever reason. But he texted me and he's like, "Did Jeff just crash our donor party at Coronado?" And I was like, "I don't know, did he?" He's like, "That's the rumor."
That's the rumor.
So apparently there's a rumor going around that you crashed the party.
I didn't crash the party. No, all I did was my son was like, a huge fan of Charlie Kirk, and so we just walked on the beach. They had Charlie has and he needs it, obviously, legit
security,
legit security. He ain't hiring no mall cops, trust me. So it's a
and they go with him everywhere too.
It's a public beach, right? So I'm allowed to be there, and so I didn't have a thing for the event. I'm not just gonna walk in, even though I knew some staff there, and they were like, "Hey, Jeff," and so, but I didn't want to interrupt anything. So I stood on the sidewalk by the beach, and it was crazy too because I'm standing there and hoping to get Charlie's attention, and I could see him. He's not too far from me, but the security was on me, you could tell. I was trying to be like, "It's cool, guys. I'm cool.
I'm fine. I actually like his work. I support him."
And they were just standing staring, eyeballing me. I was like, "Guys, you're not being very subtle. I know who you're looking at." Anyway, someone went and grabbed him and got to say hi to him and introduce him to my son. That's all Stellar cared about was he was more. He was more into that's Charlie Kirk than the Navy SEALs, which isn't really
to each his own.
Isn't really like him.
Charlie's got a better social media platform.
Yeah, that's true. But can we tell everyone? Did we talk about this? We didn't talk about this.
No, we haven't been on the show.
Okay, so the coolest thing for me. Sorry, we're getting into the show, guys, but you definitely want to hear this story. So the reason we were at Commander Geary's retirement ceremony is that he really blesses us and in some ways credits Apologia Church and the work here with the fact that he had a retirement ceremony. Long story. We've done episodes on it. Persecuted by the Navy itself, and because we were able to get him connected with our people and attorneys, he was able to overcome that, and he won. And so instead of not being able to retire, he actually had a retirement ceremony. Big deal. So that's why he invited us. But at the end of this amazing ceremony, and it was long. It was longer than I expected it to be.
Just a couple hours.
Yeah. At the end of it, he finished everything up. Retirement's officially over. And then they announced from the platform that Commander Geary or Captain Geary would like all the Navy SEALs in the audience to join him for one more.
Hit the surf one more time.
Hit the surf one more time. And this is we're on the grinder at Bud's, where every Navy SEAL since 1970 has been grinded down and made a SEAL. And so we're also around the corner from the part of the beach where every Navy SEAL has been punished in that spot. And so he invited all the SEALs there to go hit the surf one more time at the spot that every Navy SEAL is created at. And all at once, without hesitation, as soon as they said it, every Navy SEAL there jumps up. And some tore their clothes off.
Yeah, it was like they were wearing those basketball tearaway pants. I mean, it was insane how quickly they got to their skivvies.
Instantly. Some tore their clothes off, and some did not tear their clothes off, and they're wearing their literal military uniform with boots and everything else. And they all just go darting for the surf. But when it was all said and done, you had 50 to 75 legendary Navy SEALs all in the ocean together in their clothes, some were in their underwear. It was one of the Navy SEALs we know is a legend in the community, a sincere legend. We were at a group meeting with a bunch of Navy SEALs, and they said that he's killed more people than smallpox. That's how they described him.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, he was there. He's the hardest dude ever.
He doesn't need to stay hard. He always is.
He was a part of the squadron of DevGru, which is SEAL Team 6, that the Navy still doesn't acknowledge its existence to this day. Maybe someday they will, but they don't actually acknowledge the existence of this squadron in DevGru. And so we know him, and we know how hard he is. He goes in to the ocean. He comes out. He walks up to me. He goes, "I never thought I'd do that again." He goes, "That was cold, dude." I was like, "You're the hardest Navy SEAL ever." And he's like, I'm freezing.
You probably didn't even feel it.
He's retired now.
He did 30 years to be.
Yeah. So he's retired now.
He served his time.
He's like, I'm sick of the cold. I don't want to play with it anymore. Anyway, so that was just a gift to be able to do that. But So all that, got to say hi to Charlie Kirk, and dude, he's really, really tall. Do you know,
Really? Charlie?
He's tall. Yeah, he's tall.
6'2", 6'3".
I don't know. He looked super tall to me. I wasn't expecting him to be so tall. Anyway, so Charlie Kirk does some really great work, some good stuff. I love how open he is about his faith in Jesus, and he points people to Christ, and so I'm grateful for that.
Oh, he's 6'5".
Is he really?
He is tall.
He's taller than me.
I knew he wasn't 6'2". So I'm grateful for Charlie's work in many ways. I love how he points people to Jesus. And there's one area I would disagree with him on that I know for sure, and that's his perspective on abortion and abolition. He kind of holds to the party line of the pro-life industry, and that's that the woman is a victim and she's not to be punished and that sort of a thing. So it's inconsistent, and I think if I had time to sit down with him, and he doesn't want to be inconsistent, I think that enough time working through this, Charlie would get to a place of consistency. I'm convinced of that. Because he's a bold dude, and he cares about the truth, and I think that he's just adopted a doctrine he hasn't really thought through very much. But anyways, he was on Bill Maher. Bill Maher, interesting dude, obviously super hostile to Christianity in the past. He seems to be lightening up a bit, and many of these hardcore atheists of the last 15 years seem to be lightening up a bit in many ways, which is
interesting. Which
is helpful. Do
you think it's because, he talks a lot about this episode, but because of the woke stuff that they're like, I don't like that.
That's too far.
Not going that far.
Yeah, not going to go that
so
far.
Maybe Christianity's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, it's like Dawkins saying he's a cultural Christian, like he wants to live in a Christian nation. It's like, okay, after, the God delusion and all the other nonsense that you spewed forth, you just can't live without it, can you? But Bill Maher, I do respect the fact that Bill Maher, as hostile as he has been to Christianity, and the rabid atheist that he has been in the past, and the leftist, I do appreciate that recently, in recent years, he has even been vilified by his own side, because he does confront his own side over the woke stuff and the transgender stuff.
Yeah, he says he's liberal but not woke.
Right. Yeah. And so I do appreciate that he's got enough he has enough nerve to be able to confront his own side. You always have to at least appreciate
you got to respect that.
Got to respect people that are willing to confront their own team and say, hey, this is wrong, this is inconsistent. So I like that. Anyway, so he has Charlie Kirk on Club Random. Love to listen to these long-form things. That's how I like to do media like this. And anyway, so there's a couple parts of this that we thought would be beneficial to talk through. Charlie Kirk versus Bill Maher. This is the first clip. This is from about 32 minutes in, and here we go.
That if they do something out of line, illegal or immoral, that the devil will, in short order after they die, be poking them in the ass with a pitchfork, and so they don't do that. And I got to give it up. That is a positive.
Are you at all worried that when a nation becomes too secular, it might not know what it believes? There's no cultural cohesion. There's no glue that keeps it together.
Yeah, but this isn't that nation. This isn't secular. This is a bunch of fucking religious freaks.
Increasingly secular, though.
Well, thank you. I'm trying.
No, but
I appreciate it.
You are quite the advantage.
So, real quick, please forgive me.
Explicit warning.
I apologize. It totally slipped my mind. I'm going to apologize to all the homeschool moms out there that had this playing and the kids are there. I sincerely apologize. I should have warned you. Bill Maher has a little bit of a mouth on him. He's got a potty mouth. And so that's going to come up a few times in here. We didn't have time to do all the bleeps and everything else on this, so I apologize. Can't do it. So, but it's valuable content to engage with, and we think it'll be super helpful to be able to engage with these kind of arguments. I do apologize. Please forgive me. That was my fault. I didn't warn you ahead of time.
Cause of no afterlife and no creator.
You know what? It creeps up a little, but people always are going to want it. People always are going to want to believe a story. It's much better than the truth, which is that things are random. We don't know the big questions. We don't know how we got here. We don't know why we're here. We don't know how the universe started. We're alone in the universe. Is there a God? What is the nature of God? Which one is the right God? We just don't. Nobody knows. That's why they call it faith.
Do you hope you're wrong? That's the most important question.
That's a great question.
Can we say something to that right there?
Yeah.
You gotta love how he starts out by saying it creeps a bit. So there is an aspect of this that he's consciously thinking through, and you can only suppress the truth for so long.
Right.
It will creep up and it'll poke its head out here. And I think deep down, like we all know the foundation of our society and what leads to virtuous living. And it's not the perspective that he's espousing here. Like he says, it's easier for people to believe in a story than it is
like the Big Bang.
The truth.
Right.
Everything's random. We don't know how we got here. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what our purpose is. And we don't have any answers to the big questions. Well, that's quite a story that you've told us.
Exactly, yeah.
Welcome to atheism.
That's quite a meta-narrative that you are propagating here. So what about that story? Is that the story that really inspires people to live virtuously? Because I think what he really means is when he says story, he means like fairy tale.
Yeah.
Like this fairy tale that you guys are propagating, and meanwhile he holds to maybe some version of the Big Bang, like the virgin birth of the universe theory.
The virgin
right?
birth.
Like
everything. I want to say that out loud. The virgin birth of the universe. They want that one miracle.
Which is quite miraculous.
Because he mentions that, and he says, but then he even says, but that's not where everything came from. Like he admits that can't be the beginning.
Right. I don't know, but I know that I don't know. That's the one thing I know for sure.
Well, and I think that's probably the key thing I would want to talk to Bill about is to say, you don't know the answers to the big questions. Everything is random. You don't know, but you don't live that way, and you don't talk that way. On your show, on your program on HBO, you don't talk like you don't know. You talk like you do know.
Right.
About a great many topics.
About many things. And you'll talk, he just admitted that it's all random. The truth is, this is all random. We have no answers. We don't know how we got here. We don't know the purpose. And so
that's the truth.
I
know it.
No
yeah. So you are saying you know the truth. You're trying to act humble about it. But it's amazing because if you listen to Bill Maher, and I have watched many episodes of his show on HBO over the years when he's had different people on. Some of it's quite entertaining and fun to listen to. When he's on his show, he doesn't act like he doesn't know. He acts like he does know. And as Doug Wilson said to Christopher Hitchens in their debate, Bill Maher would make a very good Puritan. Like he's that strong in his ethical code, right? And so he
has one.
Yeah, he has one, and he's very strong in it. And he pontificates, and he is rigorous in his commitments to his ethical system. So while he says here, it's all random, we don't know, he has to live like he does know. And there's a complexity
contradiction,
of the atheistic perspective. I don't know. It's all random. It's all purposeless. It's all meaningless. But they don't live that way. Even in this episode here, Bill will decry particular ethical failures even amongst Christians and even decrying God's ethical failures.
Yeah, unjust suffering and so on.
But remember, he says he doesn't know. I don't know. There aren't answers to these things. I don't know. But he lives like he does know. Here's the point. Why highlight that? Like, why are we highlighting that? And here's the reason for the highlight. Is because everybody actually has, in a case like this, hidden assumptions. Assumptions that they're not necessarily saying out loud. They have commitments, presuppositions, things they're holding on to underneath the conversation. That's where the real conversation exists. This is where it should exist, is down here at all the assumptions and things we're holding on to at the bottom. All the other conversations about, I think that's wrong, this is wrong, suffering's bad, all those meaningful things, but it's the stuff on top of the soil. Like, if you really want to get down to it, start digging up and get to the root and say, okay, that's the real issue. Like, the reason the weed is here is because the issue is down here.
Yeah. They're the assumptions that make up the claims.
Exactly.
And that's what you have to point to and be like, well, if that's what you believe, why make the statement?
Right, exactly. And so that's the one thing is, like, Charlie does a good job of trying to knock down some of the peripheral things that Bill will be struggling with. He'll try to knock those out of the way and say, actually, no, this is true. And what do you think about this piece of evidence? And
ask excellent questions.
What would you say if I said this to you? And, like, how would you deal with this? But in the end, it's like, okay, we can get to those questions, and they are meaningful questions. But, like, you have to get down to the bottom and challenge those basic assumptions of life. Like Bill says, it's all random. We don't know how we got here. We don't know this. We don't know the answer to the big questions. But the point is like you have to, when Bill begins to act like he does know, say, I thought you didn't know. I thought that it was meaningless. I thought that it was purposeless, which shows an inconsistency between what you say is true about the world and how you actually live. Right. And that's where the conversation needs to take place to get to a meaningful end. And so that's, I think, the one critique we would have is like, get to those underlying assumptions, Bill's presuppositions as an atheist, and say, can you make sense of your experience with the commitments that you say that you have? Can you make sense of anything that you're actually saying right now when you decry this moral atrocity or this kind of suffering or whatever the case may be? Can you make sense of any of it? Is any of it coherent with your atheist presuppositions, or are you actually, to live in the world, having to live as a quasi-Christian, right? Somebody sort of like, you know, in my daily life, I live like with the assumptions of the Christian worldview, but my commitments are totally opposite of that. And that's the key issue, is to point that out. Because the key issue for us is we want to point to Bill, like, look, you're made in the image of God. You're more valuable, meaningful than you say you are. Life is more valuable and purposeful and meaningful than you say that it is. There are answers to these questions, and you're living with one foot in each world.
Yeah.
And so you have to make a decision. Like, do you want to live in atheism? Great, let's go to nihilism. Let's go the whole way. Let's go where you should go as an atheist, and where many atheist ethicists have written about and spoken about, like, this is the logical conclusion of atheism. There's no immanent morality. Right. There's no free will either. We're just dancing out our DNA. All those things, like, live consistently with that. I was talking to some atheists on the street in Mesa recently, and in that conversation, one of the dudes was like, yeah, I'm a nihilist. And I was like, well, I respect that. Not that I respect nihilism. I respect the fact that you're an atheist that says, well, then the conclusion is nihilism. I do respect that integrity in system, is to think through your system to the degree that you go,
I hope you don't act on it while we're standing.
Yeah, I'd like you not to like live like that, please, in front of me, and you're never going to babysit my kids.
Right.
But like I respect the attempt at consistency.
Did you quote the dude when he told you that?
The dude?
Yeah. You wanted to, I know.
Yeah, I know. Every time I hear nihilism, I think of the Big Lebowski.
I know you. Well, I was just going to say, just quickly, I mean, we talked about this before we started, but there was some, to give credit to Charlie, there was some really great points that you made throughout this interview, but there were some spots, you know, like here's one where he had an opportunity to take, you know, Bill's legs off, and he didn't. And he kind of left it. We were like, you missed that one, bud. Like, you know, there's like a few spots like that. So
I think the point there, Luke, is what we would want to express to people very humbly is that the Christian worldview, the Christian philosophical position is devastating to unbelief.
Yeah.
The world system cannot produce a cogent or coherent answer to any of these big questions. And the Christian system is not something to be trifled with when it comes to philosophically, and we talk about epistemology and knowledge. And so it's good to go ahead and bring that to the unbeliever as graciously as you can, as lovingly as you can, but also as devastatingly as you can. Devastate the unbeliever system so they realize that they're standing on sand. That's the key.
Do you hope there's a heaven?
I hope they figure out how I can live forever. I like it here with you, Charlie, drinking this and smoking pot.
Fiji,
I'm having a great time. I really can't imagine it better. I mean, I can't. And maybe it is. I'm sure
Can
it
I
is.
say one thing about that?
I'm sure, you know,
Just
people
a quick
have...
comment. Isn't it interesting? He said, do you want to go to heaven? And he said, I want to live forever.
Right.
And I think that's unbelief at its core, is that man wants to live forever without God.
Yes.
He doesn't hope he's wrong, because he's at war with his creator, who is also the judge that he will stand before. That's why he wants to live forever.
Yes. And when you think about the unbeliever's plight, they live in a world that's broken, that is under the curse of sin. So there's sickness, disease, decay, death. There's depravity, depression, alienation from God, alienation from other human beings. But the image of God is not erased in any of us. It's still there. It's still there. And this is still God's world, and God still causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. And so there's still the blessings of God and the goodness of God every single day, even to people who hate him. And so Bill can be in rebellion against God like this as an image bearer of God. He hasn't been lost with the image of God, and he still has the opportunity to experience the blessings of humanity and God's goodness and this world. And so you made a good point. It's like, I want all the blessings that only come from the one who gives them, but I don't want him.
He wants everlasting life, but not the Lord of life.
Yeah, I want everlasting life here apart from God. And the truth is that's a miserable existence. Because from a Christian perspective, this world, although good, it is good, and there are so many blessings, and there's the goodness of God all around us, and it's just shouting at us. This world is so marred and so broken. This isn't the experience that we ought to have as image bearers of God with God. We are supposed to live in communion with God and one another with perfection. No sin, no decay, no disease, no depravity, no conflict, no lack of peace, total peace, comfort, love, true love for God and one another. And this world is broken. And so the truth is if Bill dies in this state apart from God, this will be the best he ever had, for sure. And that's a sad story.
It is.
It's a sad story because for the Christian, this is not the best we will ever have. We will live forever on this earth, unfettered by sin and depravity, decay, disease. All that stuff is gone in the eternal state, but it is here. It is actually here. Like when we talk about the consummation of all things, when Christ finally defeats death in all of humanity, and there's a resurrection of the just and the unjust, heaven and earth are back together once again, and it is as God intended it in the beginning. And so it's sad to hear someone like Bill say, like, I'm going to live apart from God here forever, because this is not the way things ought to be, right? Like, just turn on the news any random time of any random day, and you're going to see this world is so broken.
Yeah, it's messed up.
It's so broken. And so there's something better, Bill. If you get to see this, Bill, there's something so much better. Peace with God and eternal life with God in Christ is so much better. Yeah. And all of the things you decry as an image bearer of God and an atheist, the suffering, the evil, the conflict, all those things fall away. All those things fall away in eternity with God. And so I hope that Bill comes to know Jesus. Yep. Okay, so next clip is let's go to this one here. Well, actually, we'll keep going into this next one.
Yeah,
here.
it's close enough.
Yeah, 30. Okay, it's about 33 minutes.
Yep, perfect.
Do you hope there's a heaven?
I hope they figure out how I can live forever. I like it here with you, Charlie, drinking this and smoking pot.
Fiji,
I'm having a great time. I really can't imagine it better. I mean, I can't. And maybe it is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure, people have...
But something in you probably hopes that, I don't know,
yes,
Hitler gets ultimate judgment, or the most evil things, right? Something in you wants to see your loved ones and...
I don't think about Hitler.
No, but there's got to be a desire somewhere.
A lot of people just think about Hitler a lot.
Stalin, Mao...
I know, but I'm just saying Hitler comes up a lot.
He really... Fair enough. That there's a desire that there's something beyond this.
Well...
That is just.
Okay. Yes, I do, but I mean, it's very hard to find that justice on earth. Ask an AIDS baby.
Oh, don't, Bill, that's what...
Big conversation.
Very good question.
Good conversation.
By Charlie about judgment.
Yeah, very good. And the question of justice, so when Bill says justice isn't done here on earth, and there's so much injustice and terrible evils that happen in this earth, it's not wrong to point out to him, hey, Bill, can we circle back for a second to what you said before, where you said it's all random, we don't know the big questions, we don't know how we got here, and your fundamental assertion about the nature of humanity is that it's all a biological accident, in meaning that though there are complex systems, those complex systems didn't have any purposer, and there's no meaning to any of it. It's all just random by your own words. And so you can't on the one hand say that it is random and meaningless and purposeless and we don't know anything, and then say there's so much injustice in this world. And so I think Charlie did a great job of appealing to the image of God in him and saying, don't you hope that there's justice for someone like Hitler?
Yeah.
And then, of course, Bill has to say, well, everyone wants to talk about Hitler. It's like, well, because it's an important question.
Yeah, right.
Especially as of late.
True that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's an important question. As an atheist, you can't just sort of wave the hand at it and just,
Pick your dictator that killed millions.
Yeah,
though.
pick a different one. You know, Paul, and Charlie said it. Charlie said, Pol Pot, Mao, you want to talk about the last century? I mean, we should do that. Stalin. We can talk about the atheist regimes that killed over 100 million people. So it's a meaningful conversation.
How about Planned Parenthood?
Right. But, so let's talk about it. So he said, we talk about the atheist regimes of the last 100 years that have killed over 100 million people. Those are atheist regimes, by the way, and rooted in atheism, atheistic thought about the nature of man and all those sorts of things. He wants to sort of dismiss millions of image bearers of God dying and talk about the baby with AIDS. Okay, but I thought it was random, and I thought it's meaningless and purposeless, and there's no inherent value in a human being that's different than, say, a rock. Like a rock is a random result of evolutionary processes, and so is the AIDS baby. Okay? But do you shed tears when rocks fall off of cliffs and crash at the bottom and break to pieces? Nobody sheds a tear over that.
Yeah, he holds a distinction within his mind for a rock and a human.
Right.
Ontologically speaking, like we look at humans and we say, this is bad, this is wrong, this thing over here has inherent value that must be protected and acknowledged, as opposed to all these other aspects of creation that are part of the material world, the rock, the tree, so on and so forth. Like, he makes a distinction whether he realizes it or not, and that's what you're talking about with the unspoken assumptions.
Yes. And we have to ask a deep question. It's important to ask it in these conversations because we're trying to get to the truth. And Bill says he's all about the truth. Some people like stories. Some people like the truth. I want to say I want the truth. I want the truthful stories. I want just the truth. And that's because I'm a Christian, because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no man comes to the Father but by me. So Christians are the ones that are supposed to be obsessed with the truth.
Right.
Obsessed with it. And so I want to ask the question, what's wrong with the baby with AIDS? According to your assumptions about a random universe and human beings, we don't know the big questions. We don't know about any of this stuff. I want to know where the atheist gets off being able to decry the plight of the baby with AIDS. Because from a Christian perspective, I get to be aggrieved over that. Like if I walk into a hospital as a pastor and I stand at the bedside of a dead baby, or I walk into a sick room with someone dying of a disease, I get to grieve over that. My worldview makes sense of grieving over it, saying this should not be this way. This is the image of God. This is not the way that God intended the world to be in terms of how it ought to be without sin. This is something that is broken, and this should grieve me, and this hurts, and this is something that should harm our conscience, and this is something that we should be thinking about how to solve and how to care for this precious human being. It matters to the Christian worldview. And of course, the atheist wants to go, I want to know why God allowed it. And it's like, okay, we'll get to that. We have answers to that as well. But let's talk about the weight of the emotion you're appealing to. You actually don't get to spend that on me. Like, I get to spend it on you by saying it matters in my worldview. It doesn't matter in yours.
Yeah.
I mean,
license and registration. Right.
Yes.
You're not authorized to drive that vehicle.
Right. Exactly. You don't get to have that. Now, in a Christian worldview, I get to step into a world that says, no, that baby is valuable. It's just as valuable as me. Its life matters as much as mine. It's as uniquely created by God as me, with purpose and meaning as me. And dignity is shared in this humanity. And I get to shed tears over this because I know what God says about the creation of the world and how things ought to be. And that's not the way that they are now. So what's the truthful story behind what got us to this place? And then I get to talk about all kinds of things like sin and the result of sin and rebellion, all of creation, even all of creation itself, testifying to the fall, humanity, the real evil, the real injustice. I have a standard to call it unjust because I have the very character and nature of God to appeal to and his very word. I get to appeal to things like the God of this entire story isn't detached from the suffering and the evil in this world, that he loves rebels, even rebels, so much that he steps into the world itself and experiences the suffering and the pain and the evil of this world, all the injustices. I mean, there's nothing that you can experience in this life and say that's unjust and evil, that Christ didn't experience himself in this world. It's not a God who is far off. It is a God who is so very near. He is transcendent, yes, for sure, but he is also immanent, and that is very active here, covenantally active. He is here, and he is not silent. He is here, he's walked among us, and that's the beautiful story of the Christian worldview, is you have a God who enters into humanity that has rebelled against him to go and seek and save that which was lost. It's people running away from God and God chasing them down. And then God, all the while chasing down the sinner to love the sinner and to give them mercy, God is experiencing the evil, the pain, the death, the disease, the heartache, and even the betrayals of this life and the abuses of this life. He experiences all of that. And so when you ask, like, which God, Bill, we're saying that God. That God answers your problem.
Right. Yeah, the answer to the big questions of suffering cannot be that God does not care, because the cross.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say that this is literally Romans chapter 1. Right? He knows God's made himself evident to him in creation, i.e., the baby with AIDS has dignity, but he's suppressing that truth in his unrighteousness. I mean, he's just literally just living out God's word, and that's where I think Charlie missed an opportunity to graciously point that out to him.
I'd like to say, I think this is right in terms of how my mind thinks, but also some of that's influenced by my Christianity and, like, be consistent. God doesn't lie. God doesn't engage in logical contradictions. You have to be consistent. But I think if I was an atheist, I wouldn't use these arguments, because I would know, like, deep down in my system that
how am I going to account for this?
I'm not going to be able to account for what I'm saying. Right. I'm not going to be able to justify what I'm saying. And so, like, as a Christian, I think through those things. Like, if I was in your shoes and I had your system, I wouldn't be complaining about the baby with AIDS.
Right.
I wouldn't be doing that. And by the way, this is an important conversation to have, and I would want to say this to Bill. Bill, I mean, don't you recognize that as an atheist, it is your system and your tribe that hasn't done a damn thing about that in history?
Yeah, historically speaking, it's the church.
I'm being as blunt as I possibly can. You haven't cared. Your tribe, your system hasn't cared. It is the Christian church, because of the Christian worldview and Christian presuppositions, that have built the hospital systems and the medical systems and doctors and caring for souls and those sorts of things. Atheist regimes in history, they haven't done that.
No.
Like, you think about, like, where did like all this stuff come from in terms of the medical system? Now, I know, look, this is a sad state of affairs. I recognize it, and it was sad for me when I was a chaplain at a hospital for 4 years. Like, that hospital was started as a Christian institution. And then this big hospital organization came in, and I was told they bought 500 hospitals. This major.
I don't even know. I don't know what that dollar amount is.
How do you do that? I don't know. I was told they bought 500 hospitals, because when they were taking over the hospital I was at, I was told this hospital corporation's coming in right now because they discovered, like, they bought, like, a bunch of hospitals, and now they realize they own one with a Christian program, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They didn't even know what they were buying when they bought it. Really strange. So they had all the bigwigs came in, and, like, I had to sit down with them and explain, like, what I did there and everything else. But that's I'm saying it to say, now, yes, there's all these secular corporations now and non-Christian organizations that have bought up First Baptist Hospital or St. Luke's Hospital, those sorts of things. They've bought them up now, and they're now just run by, unbelieving corporations. But where do they come from? Like, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, these major hospitals in cities, do you notice they had, like, Christian names? Like St. Luke's, St. John's, and, First Baptist Hospital,
Methodist.
First Presbyterian Hospital. Why? Because these are hospital organizations started by churches. So when we talk about the AIDS baby, that's how he said it, the AIDS baby, it's the Christian church, not the atheists, who actually sought in history to solve those problems and to care for those people.
Can you imagine going to, like, the first atheist hospital?
Not one.
Like, do you think this surgery's going to work today? I don't know. We'll find out. It's random.
Yeah, for all of
and if it doesn't, who cares? You're an accident anyway.
Exactly. For all of atheism's self-professed humanitarian efforts, you're right. It's been the church historically that has cared for the oppressed, cared for the sick, cared for the orphan. They're the ones that have done the most in terms of hospice care and all of that, because even dying people deserve that kind of dignity and care. Like, that's a Christian concept.
Right.
Because death is an enemy. And the caring for the people on their deathbeds even, like, you just don't get that from a cosmic perspective that says we're meat bone.
And there's one more thing to that, Zach, and that's that it goes even further than that. If you think about what we're talking about, we're talking about life care.
Yeah.
Somebody in life who's suffering and struggling in life. And you're right, in hospice care, you're talking about the end of life, making it as comfortable for them as possible, loving them on their way out, right, caring for them. But when they die, you think about the tradition that the Christians have of dignity even in death and hope even in death. And that is to say that what do we do with our dead? Christians historically, look, this is not an attack on other people who have done cremation, and if you have done cremation,
I know where you're going, and I agree.
If you have done cremation of a loved one, just know that God can raise even the ashes.
Sure,
of course. But you do need to understand that in Christian history, it was seen as very important, vital to what we believe, that you give a human being a full and proper burial. You do not decimate their biology. You don't destroy them, because there's the anticipation that though we're dead now and going into the ground, there will be a day of a final resurrection. And there was something to be said in death that when you place a body into a casket or a tomb in full, that you are anticipating the day where this body will rise again from the dead. There was dignity even in the burial process. So, like, the Christian worldview sort of goes the whole thread, even to the body itself, when the person is dead and no longer present, body and soul separated, or body and spirit separated. When even that occurs, there is still this care and concern for the dignity of that human being, though their spiritual essence is no longer present in the body. You still care for the dignity of that person.
The sanctity of human life from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
That's a Christian concept, but I really don't want to get into the weeds on that, but it's so fascinating to me, like, that you brought that up too, because it's interesting. In the early church in those days, the Romans wouldn't let believers collect the bodies of their fallen brethren to be buried, because they knew what hope Christians attached to the resurrection.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow Christians to collect the bodies of their fallen brethren in the Roman games and so on and so forth, because the emperor was so intent on making an example out of Christianity that they knew the hope of the resurrection, the place that it held in the hearts of Christians.
Yeah.
It was the central aspect of Christian hope, that God could reconstitute our physical bodies and raise us from death to life, because that's what our Savior did.
Yeah.
And so they did it as a means to demoralize Christians.
Yeah.
They withheld their bodies from them to try to suck the life out of them and their fight.
Yeah.
So I think if the Roman Empire knew what it was that the church held so tightly and so closely to their hearts, we should recognize the power of that too.
Yeah, that is good. Very powerful. Okay, now we're going to jump ahead a little bit. This is a little later on in the episode. This is about 50 minutes in. Gets into some interesting questions about the law of God.
Roots without an alternative. Because if we cut our roots, then we get all this other counterfeit stuff of wokeism and all this postmodernist garbage. So our contention is, let's go back to where we came from.
You know who Eugene O'Neill is? No? Eugene O'Neill?
No.
Oh, wow. Kids today. A giant of American literature, theater. A Long Day's Journey into Night. Have you heard of that play? Never heard of Long Day's Journey into Night? You kids, what are they doing with you in school?
I never went to college, Bill. This is the problem.
Okay. Anyway, he once said, I find a life with illusions unpardonable, and a life without illusions unbearable. And that's the essence of where we are. You choose the second, I choose the first. I find a life with illusions unpardonable. I just can't do it, okay? And you find a life without illusions unbearable. And the fact that we can, I think...
Is that true?
Yeah.
How do you know that you're not living in a life that is one big illusion?
Yes. And it's a false dichotomy. I know what he's attempting to do here, but it's a false dichotomy to say, Charlie, you like the illusions and don't want to live without them. But the Christian perspective is that we shouldn't live by illusions. So it's a false dichotomy. You're putting something upon the Christian that they don't actually believe. Even Bill's definition of faith is not the Christian definition of faith. We don't believe that faith... Nobody is supposed to have blind, stupid faith in the Christian religion. Nobody. As a matter of fact, that's condemned in Scripture throughout. The kind of idea that you just take blind, stupid leaps of faith. You're not supposed to be foolish. You're supposed to use wisdom. You're supposed to believe things because they're true. I mean, God, even in His law, requires evidence when you're giving accusations. You can't just believe something without evidence. I mean, that's rooted into the Christian worldview. So the whole, like if someone said to me, Jeff, you just want to live by your illusions, I would say, look, I decry that. I mean, nobody should be believing falsehoods or just living by illusions or what you just simply, hope is true, but you have no evidence or proof for that. That's not the Christian faith. Maybe you're talking about some other kind of faith, and that's fine, but you're not talking about the Christian faith. Christians repudiate the idea of living by lies. Don't live by lies. And don't live by illusions or delusions. None of those things. Believe things because they're true. I mean, it's one of the condemnations that God will give to His people is that they're not believing things that are actually the truth. They're believing lies. They're believing falsehoods. They're believing false prophets. They should believe the truth and only the truth. And so it's a false dichotomy, but he goes a little further here.
Well, and this coming from the guy who lives by the illusion that the only truth is there is no truth.
Right.
That's exactly what I was thinking. He's already laid down the foundation that he doesn't know. Right. And yet he's saying you're wrong for living according to an illusion.
Yeah.
But the question would be, how do you know what's real given your system?
Right.
If you can't know what's real, if you can't even know how you trust your own sense perception, the evidence of your eyes, the physical sensations you experience, how do you know what's true? And if you don't know what's true, then how can you say I'm living in an illusion? Or be able to distinguish between illusion and reality?
Right.
Because you have to have an epistemology at your core that allows you to make sense of your sense perception.
Right.
And the only way you have that is if the Christian God has spoken and told you that you can trust the senses that He gave you.
Right.
Right?
And trust that the world is ordered,
Yes.
that it is uniform, that critical thinking matters, that laws of logic are an actual thing. They're not just a construct of our minds.
Right.
They're actual things that are universal, invariant truths, all that stuff you need. By the way, look, Bill, if your system is true, then living by illusions isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Right.
If somebody is just the random results of evolutionary processes, if we're in a universe that doesn't care about us and didn't intend us, if there's no purpose, there's no meaning, and it's all just random stuff, biological stuff that matter is working on, then someone living by illusions is not a problem. You act like it is, but it's not in your system. It is in the Christian system.
This moment where we go, okay, that's you, type A, I'm type B, and still be friends. To me, this is the future of where this country has to go.
And nothing you have said has offended me in the slightest.
And I
mean that.
appreciate
It's not
that. And I appreciate that. Because, again, that was my question in Religulous. How can otherwise really super smart people, but this is the answer. Can
I interrupt? Do you
Yes.
doubt those of us that have had religious experiences? Do you think it's just like neurological phenomenon?
How would you
if
define it?
I say that Jesus changed my life and that He's gone to work in my soul?
Okay, but was he did he jump in the car with you at the drive-thru?
But
okay,
it's
what you said, a religious experience. I have to ask how much that is.
There was a moment where I realized that I'm not all that I would ever want to be, that I fall short of the glory of God's wish. And
when was this?
When I was in 5th grade, actually. Believe it or not.
5th grade?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's when I gave my life to the Lord.
You were thinking about this shit in 5th grade?
Amazingly. I went to Christian school.
So you don't see that as indoctrination?
Well, I actually went to a private school
Hold on. Before you go there, I just want to say
Hilarious.
I appreciate that question that Charlie asked him because he's trying to get into the metaphysical conversation that Bill clearly wants nothing to do with.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination.
It's like and what you're doing campaigning for atheism isn't.
Yeah.
Right. Or your movie Religulous.
Yeah.
Right.
Or public schools.
You were teaching in your movie Religulous. That's
you
what
were
you
catechizing an entire generation.
Yeah, exactly. Doctrine means teaching, and so it's your particular belief system that you're promulgating, and so that's doctrine, teaching, right? Indoctrination is that process of teaching and getting that teaching into people. And so if you have a secular school, a humanist school with a curriculum that is completely humanist, that is devoid of Christ and devoid of the Christian worldview, then that is also indoctrination. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. The Christians are indoctrinating their children, yes and amen, and so are the atheists. They are indoctrinating their children. So it's not like whether people do it, but it's which system.
Which, yeah.
It's always that question of which, not whether, right? Not whether we'll have a God, but which God. Whether we're going to impose a moral system, but which moral system will be imposed, and whether we're going to indoctrinate our children, but with which system will we do it? And so, yeah, Charlie was, he was taught, indoctrinated within a Christian system, and the kids going to government schools are indoctrinated in a unbelieving system, and so we're all doing it. We just need to grant it and then ask the deeper question, whose doctrine is true?
Right.
Because that matters to Bill, and if Bill Maher ever saw this, I would say, Bill, I believe you that it matters to you that it's true, okay? I don't think your system can make any sense of that, but I do believe that you believe that it matters that it's true, okay? And so it's a question of which doctrine's true, which one, not whether we're going to do it.
And which, by the way, can provide any existential comfort at all in the face of evil, injustice, suffering.
Right.
Is it yours? Doubtful.
Yeah.
Like for him, suffering is just an interruption of our happiness. Yeah. Like it has no productive value. It has no redemptive capacity to it.
It's just a nervous system.
It just happens.
It's just a nervous
It just
system.
takes us temporarily off the course, and then we have to alleviate the symptoms of it. Like the Christian hope is so much more glorious and better. Like you talked about it already. God using suffering. He uses the thing that Bill says he hates in order to defeat the thing that Bill says he hates, which is suffering.
Yeah.
Christ uses suffering. He uses death to defeat suffering and death. There is no better story on this planet. There is no better story in this universe that's ever been told than God using our greatest enemy to defeat our greatest enemy.
And it happens to be true. It happens to be the true story.
But they didn't force it on us, to their credit.
No, but you said you were in a Christian school.
Yeah.
Okay, you're 10. You're in a Christian school. There's no connection of like maybe at a very early age they put a chip in your brain?
I mean, I still had to make the decision for myself.
And
there's a lot of kids that went to that school that aren't Christians anymore, and so.
By the way, I went to Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I went to
didn't stick.
I had the opposite reaction to catechism, which was the religious training we would go to on Sunday morning, where you would learn how to be a good Catholic. And it just really turned me off to the whole.
Was it too forceful, too legalistic, like
I
all
mean,
of it?
It was just a giant. I mean, I was used to a room with 20 kids in it at regular school, and then on Sunday there's like 60 kids, and they're from different schools, and they're just like. And the nuns were like mean because you got 60 kids you don't really know. You have to like, and of course they're mean to begin with, to like get them in order. And they scared you and they yelled at you and they hit you with a ruler on the knuckles. I'm from that era where they still like fucking hit you on the.
You know how often I hear the.
And so what? You know, it's a
Buy
good,
the T-shirt.
It's a great challenge to Bill's system is to complain about the meanness of the nuns and the rapping on the knuckles and all that stuff. It's like we feel the weight of that and go, oh, we shouldn't treat kids that way, and oh man, I hope that we have better experience and all that stuff. But you can just simply say to Bill, remember, it's random, bro. Like it's we're all cosmic accidents. We're all cosmic accidents, and so like really the philosophical challenge to your complaint right now is so what? So what?
Yeah, it's just pain receptors in your knuckles.
Right. Who cares?
From like
I mean,
scorned Catholics. The ruler is like a very common thing.
Again, the idea that you keep people in line, it's by fear. That's why you're keeping people in line, and that's a question that an atheist really, I think, is due to ask a religious person. Do you really think fear is the best way for us to grow and become good people? Because if that's how we're doing it, I do have a problem with the methodology, even if I believed in the religion.
I hear that from a lot of people that were raised Catholic, and no, I do. I'm sorry. It's true.
It's so true about the Catholic
I'm
thing.
sorry.
No, you're right.
I didn't mean to, did I do an exorcism or something?
Trust
It's
me,
just like,
trust me, we have a whole highlight reel of spit takes. It's the highlight of any show. If the guest doesn't
if I can make Bill Maher laugh,
if the guest doesn't make me do a spit take, we consider that it's a failure. But you did, so go on. But yes, Catholics, yes, that's exactly who you would hear that from.
It's an underemphasis on grace. And
grace.
Yeah.
What is grace? It's such a vague term.
So justice is getting what you deserve. Which
Me personally?
Anyone, yeah. We believe all humanity deserves damnation and judgment. Tough stuff. And it started in the garden. It's tough.
The garden? Oh, you believe in the garden? Mm-hmm. You believe in the Old Testament?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm
one
of those Christians.
Like 6,000 years old thing?
Not necessarily.
Because in religious, I went to see the...
I'm not necessarily
I went to see the museum, the museum that they have in...
Oh, yeah, Ken Ham's deal.
Ken Ham, yes, and we interviewed Ken. He was not happy.
You got to admit, the Ark is pretty impressive. Have you seen the Ark? They built a whole Ark there.
We were there for a whole day.
I don't know. Can't remember if it was before or after the Ark.
No, it was. And Jesus...
That's impressive, come on.
And Jesus riding the dinosaur.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Jesus riding the dinosaur. Do I really need to elaborate, people? Okay. Go ahead with your thing.
Judgment is...
The seed of the woman will crush the head of the dragon?
Yeah. The
Bible elaborates on that theme plenty.
And also, when he says, and this is just another thing, too, that would be fun to challenge Bill on, when he says, like, do I need to elaborate on that? Maybe he's talking about human beings and dinosaurs together, and he's mocking that idea.
That's fine. I was being tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, I know you were. But maybe Bill is not up to speed on all the current difficulties within that realm of discussion and discovery, where you have an abundance of evidence now of human beings and quote-unquote dinosaurs. That's a fairly new term in history. They were just referred to as dragons in history. Just an abundance of evidence of human beings and dinosaurs living together. Human beings having great difficulty, by the way, with some of these dinosaurs because they're causing problems for particular villages. I mean, to have a creature in a fallen world that can be very vicious and dangerous, that is super large near, your tribe or your village, that creates a lot of problems. And so there are stories of human beings having to have conflict with these things. But there's even more stories and more evidence today of these things being fairly recent in our history. You've got, of course, the well-known discovery of viable blood cells and tissues in the hip bone of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. What's that doing 65 million years later? That's not even possible. So there's becoming more and more evidence of course, human beings with dinosaurs, the biblical story and the biblical narrative. These are great things that I'd love to share with Bill Maher myself. But I think the key thing to point out here is the complaint. Bill Maher complaining about you're believing something that's not true, that's not factual, that isn't real.
Or that's fear-based.
That's fear-based.
Right.
And so talk about that. What do you want to talk about with the fear-based?
No, I wanted to ask how you would respond to that too, but I think Charlie is beginning a response here when he talks about the difference between justice, mercy, grace. I think it's a helpful distinction to make.
Yeah.
For someone that's hostile, against Christianity, like Bill Maher, I don't know if I would quite present it that way or word it that way. But listen, at the end of the day, we're all going to live in light of an ultimate reality. That's what the fear of the Lord is. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, right? Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And so when we say fear God, when Christians stand on that foundation, what we're saying is God has to be the ultimate. He has to be the ultimate commitment in your life because everyone has one. And yes, the gospel message does carry with it, in terms of our condemnation under the law, a fear of judgment. And I would say to Bill that that's already in your experience, Bill. The thing is, you suppress that truth and unrighteousness, and there's a reason you want to live forever, because you don't want to come into the judgment of God, which you already are in danger of as an unbeliever. So if you don't know Christ, yes, you should have every reason to fear and tremble because of the problem of your sin that hasn't been dealt with. But if you come into a saving relationship with God through Jesus Christ by putting your faith in him, then the fear of death is gone. The fear of judgment is no more, because now God's blessing and favor and mercy and grace rests upon you because of what Christ has done.
Right.
So that might be a start.
Well, and
of what I would
let's
say.
just end it there. I think that's probably the best way to end the show in that discussion about what the gospel does to transform us in this area. Yes, Scripture says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but that fear of the Lord there is reverential submission and awe before God. It's not fear of God like he is this unbalanced or imbalanced father, like we would maybe have in our experience of a father who has outbursts, who is uncontrolled, who is not just. It's not that kind of fear. It's a reverential awe before God of who God is, and for the Christian, let's just take this angle on it. For the Christian, we are in Christ, we're forgiven. Christ received all the penalty that was due to us for all of our sin, past, present, and future. It is finished. So why are Christians who believe that there is no more condemnation? That's what Scripture says. That we have peace with God. There is therefore now no condemnation. God will never count our sins against us. Why do we want to live in a way that's pleasing to God and love our neighbors? Because that's not fear-based.
Right.
I'm not obeying Christ and wanting to love him and honor him and love Zach and Luke. I'm not doing that because I'm afraid of what God will do to me.
Right. No, it's because he saved me.
God the Father already did to Christ what was due to me. It's already been laid on Jesus. And so why do I now want to live a life that is pleasing to God? Because he saved me, because he loves me, because he's my Father. Because this gets to the key issue. Bill was asked the question about justice. Right? He's like, oh, there's so much injustice in the world now. Okay, so he knows what's right. What ought to be the case is justice. That's what everyone ought to do. Even as an atheist, he goes, it ought to be justice.
Yeah, he wants it.
It ought to be right.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's the right thing. Justice is just right. Well, welcome to the Christian worldview. Why do you love God, worship God, and obey God? Because it's right.
Right.
Because it's the truth. Because God is worthy of it. Because that's the way the world really is.
Yeah.
And so when Bill acknowledges, I want to grant that justice should just be done because it's right, even in an atheist worldview, it should just be done because it's right. And we go, all right, you're close. Because that's what the Christian worldview says about obeying God and justice in the Christian worldview. You do it because it's right, not because necessarily you're afraid of what God would do to you, although, is it true that the criminal in the box should be trembling before the judge in the court? Yeah. Well, that's the right thing.
Yes.
That's
how he should feel.
And when justice is about to fall on the murderer and the rapist, we hope that murderer and rapist feels fear.
And drives them to repentance.
We hope they feel it. And why? Because that's the way the world is. You ought to feel like that. When justice is about to fall on you, you better be afraid. And it's a terrible thing to fall in the hands of the living God, because he is a truly good judge. Yeah. He misses nothing. And when he actually gives the penalty, it's the right penalty that matches the crime. And so you ought to be afraid of that, yes. But we're not saying, come to Jesus just because God's really this big, meanie, and scary guy. Like, you come to Jesus so you don't burn in hell. We would kind of say that, look, is the consequence of sin hell forever? According to Jesus, yes. Okay? But you don't come to Jesus just to escape hell. I would actually argue if you're coming to Jesus to simply escape hell, you probably don't understand the gospel.
Yeah.
Because actually God is the gospel.
Right.
You
get God.
The good news is you get God.
Right.
The good news is not simply I'm not going to go to hell anymore. The good news is you get God. God is the goal. God is the aim. Yeah. God is the place of pleasure and joy and peace. The good news is you actually get God, not that you don't go to hell. Not going to hell is one of those residual benefits of the Christian worldview and the gospel. The real benefit of the gospel is you get God.
Yeah, and you have his approval.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't go to hell. It's because you have his approval because of Jesus. And the justice that he wants, man, the justice that he wants was ultimately satisfied at the cross. And the proof that justice has been satisfied is that Christ was raised from the dead. And the proof of that resurrection will be vindicated on the final day when everyone is raised to stand before the King in final judgment.
That's right.
And so there will be justice.
Amen. Full justice. Nothing missed.
And just as a side note, we know Ken Ham, and I'm certain he probably wasn't very happy with Bill Maher.
Yeah.
But we've been to the Ark and the Creation Museum multiple times. I don't know what he's talking about, Jesus riding a dinosaur. It's not there.
Talking about, bro?
We've done stuff with Answers in Genesis. We've been to both things, the Ark and the Creation Museum, and we know all those guys. We've had Ken recently on the show here. And I was thinking, I'm trying to rack my brain. Did I ever see something with Jesus riding a dinosaur? And I don't think I did.
Somebody even said in the comment section that it's not there.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Just real quick, you guys see my patch? Check it.
My patch.
Hey, I got the new one. The
What
new
new
one.
one?
It's the one with NAD and glutathione.
Oh.
And so
I have not got that
everyone go look up the two. Actually, now I'm going to tell you two things. Look up the benefits, health benefits of NAD, and then look up the health benefits of glutathione, the master antioxidant. IonLayer.com now has this new medical patch where you can get a high dose of NAD and a high dose of glutathione, both tremendous benefits to your health and well-being and longevity. You can get it at IonLayer.com instead of an IV treatment, which you get glutathione and NAD, both in IV treatments. Very expensive, super expensive. And you get high doses now through a transdermal patch, medical patch, gets into your system. Really, really just a great benefit. Go to IonLayer.com. Type in Apologia in all caps into the discount situation there, coupon code, and they're going to give you a discount, and they're going to actually bless and help Apologia with our ministry. And so IonLayer.com, I'm doing this stuff anyways, so we're partnered with them, and you can participate in it yourself. It's just been a tremendous blessing to me in my life. One of the things I've noticed the most since I've been doing NAD treatments personally is that my recovery time from like training and working out, like I've done times where I'm like killing myself to see like, am I going to feel this tomorrow? Like I just do my best to say like, is this really doing what I'm thinking it's doing? And I've just destroyed myself. And then the next day, it's like I didn't even work out the day before. I mean, it's fast recovery has probably been the thing that's benefited me the most. Clarity of thought, energy, those sorts of things, just really great. And that's just what I'm feeling. That's not actually what's totally going on down at the cellular level with NAD and glutathione. It's just a great, tremendous benefit for you. IonLayer.com, Apologia, all caps, and the coupon code.
And of course, I want to mention our store, so you can get all these tracks and coffee and swag and stuff at shop.apologiastudios.com. And then Heritage Defense, love those guys, love Bradley Pierce. You go to heritagedefense.org, put Apologia in the coupon code, get your first month free. And again, that's, if you don't know what that is, if you homeschool your kids, it basically is protection, 24/7 legal protection in case any three-letter agency comes to your door. And then lastly, I want to mention our new sponsor that I mentioned last week, and that's the Future of Christendom. So Future of Christendom, based out of Lancaster County in southeastern Pennsylvania, is dedicated to promoting the Lordship of Christ in every area of life. They offer a wealth of videos, podcasts, articles, and books to strengthen your faith and understanding and the law word of God. And this October, they are inviting all Apologia listeners to their 2025 conference in Pennsylvania, featuring insightful teaching on the theme of false religions, including keynote addresses from this guy right here. This conference will empower you to stand firm in your faith, explore all that Future of Christendom has to offer, including a conference and details registration at futureofchristendom.org, and use the code Apologia to get 10% off conference registration.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. So I was planning on doing an after show today. Forgive us. We can't do it. We actually have a counseling session as pastors after this, so we had to prioritize that. And so we will catch you next week right here on Apologia Radio. Don't forget to go to apologiastudios.com, sign up for All Access, partner with us in this ministry, and get ready for the app that's coming soon. That's Luke the Bear.
Peace out.
I'm the Ninja, and that is Zachary Conover.
Later.
Director of Communications for End Abortion Now. We will catch you next week, everybody.